Look, it's that time. It is I'm going to say Saturday. It's not Saturday. It's Tuesday, and it's time for Outside the Box. We have a very special guest that is going to be with us tonight. His name is Vicente, and we're talking about his transgender life. And so let's bring him on. Hey, Vicente.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for agreeing to come on and talk and share. Um, I can tell you already that I've already gotten some DMs on Facebook of people telling me thank you so much for having this conversation. And so I want you to know that we haven't even started the conversation, and we are already having an impact for a lot of people. So let's jump right on in.
Let's jump
Um,
in.
so, I guess just kind of, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch any of the other shows that I do, but this platform is not about any form of judgment. Hey, Nina, she says shalom, which means peace, and shalom to you too, Vicente.
Shalom.
This show is not about any judgment; it's conversation. And so, I guess the first thing is what I'd like to, I guess, know is, when did you know something that you felt like something wasn't right with you?
I think for me, growing up as a kid, I pretty much had a really, really strong sense of myself. I knew what I liked, I knew what I didn't. I kind of knew who I was. I think around maybe third grade was when it started getting to the point where people were now separate. Instead of just like kids, started separating into girls and boys. And when I got separated into the girls, I was like, wait, this isn't right. I just knew immediately that something was off. So that was, I guess, what kind of really tipped me off. I didn't really have the words for what I was experiencing at the time. Uh, I found the term transgender much later, probably when I was entering around middle school. But I think I always kind of knew who I was, and that being categorized was really what made me think, okay, maybe something's different.
Okay, and so when you so you're 19 now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so 19. So I guess the first thing is, how did you communicate this difference to your family?
I think with my family, there was never really a formal coming out. Before I really discovered the term transgender, I just knew in my heart, like in all of my being, I just knew I'm a boy. So that is what I would tell them. Like anytime it came up in the conversation, like I have two brothers, like if they would say something like, oh, no girls allowed, I'd be like, but I'm a boy. And my parents would hear this, and I think they didn't really understand it when I started transitioning and kind of using language like transgender, dysphoria, that kind of thing, is I think when they started to get a little bit more of an understanding, I think that it's been hard for them. It can be confusing as a parent when your child says there's something that you've probably never heard of. But I think they knew that they saw that I just wanted to be myself. I just wanted to live comfortably. And they were like, okay, even if this is hard, we're gonna try to support you, even if it takes like a little while in these kinds of conversations.
How long did it take to? So I'm assuming, and I don't know, but I would assume that your birth name was not Vicente, right?
That is correct.
So how long did it take for them to no longer refer to you by your birth name and refer to you as Vicente?
So I changed my name in seventh grade. Before that, I really kind of relied on nicknames to escape that. I chose the nickname Panda. It rhymed with my birth name. Um, so I think when my parents noticed my discomfort, that's kind of more what they started calling me, was just that nickname Panda. Um, and even when I fully changed my name, they still kind of stuck to that nickname. I felt like it was a kind of a more safe place for them, where
It
they
was a
didn't have
comfort
to,
for them.
yeah, they didn't
Hmm.
have to fully, you know, transition over the way that I was. It was that
So
middle ground.
in you said so in seventh grade, um, you basically start living as a man.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and so was it hard in school?
So I went to a kind of strange school. It was a charter school, really, really small. We had maybe like, I'd say around, we had less than 100 kids per grade. So everyone really knew each other. So my close friends kind of already had this idea that I was different before I even came out. Um, and it was really close knit school. So I feel like I didn't have as many problems as a lot of people did. It was, for me, it was more of an issue of respect. I came into my school and I told them, this is my new name. Don't call me a she, don't call me a girl. And it was more of a question of respect than anything. I think that I only really got picked on by another kid one time. And I was, I've always been like a very kind of, I have a presence, I'll say. So the one time that it
Okay.
happened, um, basically another boy in my grade was like, well, I don't want to call you this name because it's not your real name, and talking about how his parents said something. And I basically told him, like, if you're not going to respect me, I'm not going to respect you. And I I picked up his school bag and basically threw all his paper across the white top, and no one
Wow.
really messed with me after that. Yeah.
Wow. So so now what do you think is different in totality about your life? So what's different about you now that was that's not the same as it was really when you lived as a female?
So I really didn't live as a girl for that long, but I will say that I feel a lot more the minute that I transitioned, I became more comfortable in myself. I became more comfortable in like what I wore. I felt like I could be more confident when I was speaking to other people. I felt like people were seeing me and understanding me instead of looking at me and putting me in this box of, okay, you have to act like a lady. There's things you can and can't do, which is a thing that a lot of women have to face and they shouldn't have to face as women. And I think that was really restricting me. Um, and now that I like have kind of come into who I know that I am, I feel like I just am able to move more comfortably in the world. I feel a lot more confident about myself.
Okay, and so what does transition for you mean? What did that mean? You because you said when I transition, what does that mean? Have you been physically altered? If I don't know if that's too personal. If it's so, just tell me. None of my. This is my
So
first conversation, so I'm learning.
yeah, that's perfectly fine. So I will say a lot of people think of like transition as one step. A lot of people say the surgery, which isn't really a thing,
Okay.
because not everyone chooses to have surgery. And if they do, there are actually multiple options, multiple surgeries you can have. But the biggest part of transition, I would say, is what we call social transition. So this is the point of in your life where you change your name, you change your pronouns. It's where you change how you dress to be more comfortable, whichever way you want. That is what we call social transition. And then medical transition is anything to do with hormones or surgeries. Of course, I socially transitioned back when I was still in middle school. Um, and as of last year is when I began my medical transition. So I'm taking hormones. I give myself a shot of testosterone in my thigh every week on Tuesday. And basically, what that does is that I'm having like a second puberty. As you can tell, my voice is kind of lower. My
Uh-huh.
voice has been dropping. My facial structure changes. You grow body hair, just kind of puberty, basically.
Okay. So has that been hard? The medical part, has it been hard or challenging for you?
I think the challenging part was accessing it, knowing where to go, how to get it. But once I started my medical transition, it was another kind of big relief for me because it was like, oh, like now I can be seen the way that I see myself.
Okay.
And it's easier for me to go in public and feel like that people understand who I am right away.
So, uh, did you grow up in a church going or religious household?
So I have I'd say this is actually one of the more interesting things about me is that I grew up in a like very multifaceted religious household. The first church that I went to was called a Unitarian Universalist Church.
Okay.
Big long name, but more or less that is a church. They every like 9 weeks or so they'll learn about a new religion, and the goal of that is really to understand like the underlying principles that are in most religions and come to understand like the essence of spirituality and such. I think when I got a little older, maybe when I was about 10, my family went to a Presbyterian church. So that's basically um, a branch of Christianity. Um, they were also they're I'd say when it comes to Christianity, they're a little bit more liberal, progressive. So I was not out there, but it wasn't a place where I was uncomfortable. I think that I had. I'm not personally like religious. I'd say I am spiritual. At a lot of like exposure to a lot of these different religions. So I think I did get that underlying sense of spirituality. And I feel that like as a trans person that spirituality very much does apply to me. I am also a divine being of this earth, just like everyone is.
So, in terms of like socially, in terms of groups of friends, do you have the same friends now that you had when you were going through the transition, your social transition in school when you were younger, or have you found friends kind of outside of the trans community? I guess is
So I'm really lucky that in my small school, I was able to have this really close knit friend group of about three other people. Um, and back then, I was the only one who was like openly trans, openly gay. But we went through from elementary to high school together growing up, and they also kind of discovered that they were LGBT along the way. I feel like we kind of just naturally gravitated towards each other. So we've been friends for this whole time. We really stuck it out with each other. Um, in terms of like other friends, I'd say like it's kind of a come and go thing. It just depends, like workplaces, college, wherever, whatever kind of communities I'm in, those people come and go.
okay. Okay. And so when you, in terms of relationship, do you look forward to, or are you currently in a relationship?
I am not in a relationship right now. My last serious relationship was in 2018, I believe. I dated this guy for about a year. I'd say for me, dating kind of looks like it does for pretty much anyone else. The only thing is that, like, if I go into a relationship, I usually like to be with someone who knows at least a little bit about what being transgender means. um, I think it can be hard sometimes to go into a relationship and have to basically not only do the whole thing where you like you get to know each other, but you also have to like educate them about this whole facet of who you are. I think that can be a little difficult sometimes. So I do prefer to go into a relationship with either someone who knows what being trans is or someone who is trans as well.
So, would you consider yourself gay, straight, bi?
My sexuality is actually something that I'm kind of grappling with right now. Now that I'm medically transitioned and I can really allow myself to feel comfortable in these spaces, interacting with men and women and non-binary people. I think growing up, I always really considered myself gay. I'm very attracted to all kinds of men, but I've been kind of more embracing my attraction to like women and non-binary people. I would say that I still am mostly attracted to men and masculine people. So at the end of the day, I usually just call myself gay, but I'd say I'm somewhere like on the bisexual spectrum or just considering myself queer. So that's still something I'm really like
That you're still trying to
exploring.
figure out
Yeah.
and figure out. Okay, all right. Um, and so, what are your thoughts, kind of long term about? I know you're still you're 19, so you're still kind of young, and you don't have your whole life planned out. Uh,
Mhm.
at least, let me say this. Well, I'm assuming because at 19, I didn't have my life planned out. But what are your thoughts overall about? Um, are you going to have a family? Do you want kids? What does that kind of look like?
So I would say that like going forward, kids has always been like a kind of like a topic for me just because I don't know where I'm going to be financially in the future. If I do have kids, I want to know that I am like financially stable and present enough in their life to be the kind of parent that I would want to be. So my kind of plan right now for if I ever have kids, whether or not I have a partner, once I'm financially stable enough, I kind of would like to foster kids or adopt kids, just because I know, especially in the LGBT community, there's so many young kids that are in the foster care system that they don't really get the chance to ever have a home. Um, a lot of them just turn 18 and age out of the system, eventually end up being homeless. And I think, especially if I can find a trans or a gay child who needs a home, I think having, you know, an adult figure that has lived through that, I would really like to be who I basically I want to be the kind of person that I needed when I was younger. That's kind of my idea around having kids.
Now you mentioned you have brothers. What do your brothers think?
My brothers, they were always, I feel like they always just kind of knew. Um, they never treated me really any different. We were just all kind of siblings. When I came out, it was just kind of like, all right, okay. Like I think they just already knew. They've always treated me like a brother. It's never been a weird thing with their friends. They just call me, oh, that's my brother, whatever. It's not really a thing for them, which I really appreciate. I think that was some of the best support I had growing up was just knowing that it wasn't even an issue for them.
Where are you in the sibling hierarchy?
I'm the middle child, so I have an
Okay.
older brother and I have a younger brother.
Okay. All right. All right. And so do y'all are y'all still close? Y'all do stuff together and get along and all of that?
Yeah, both me and my brothers are really close. My younger brother, we're only about a year and a half apart, so we've always been like this.
Yeah.
Uh, my older brother, I feel like, has introduced me to a lot of my interests, like a lot of my music taste, a lot of my taste in fashion, that kind of thing was really shaped by my brother. He's like kind of this really out there person. He likes a lot of obscure things and he really like commits to it. So I really admire that about him, and I think he has had a lot of influence on my interests.
Okay, let's see. I think it's wonderful that your parents accepted you and chose to support you. Was there ever a time that they felt like they needed to seek counseling in order to better support you or understand the lifestyle you've chosen?
Um, I'd say around. Um, My dad, I'd say he had a point where he was definitely in denial for a long time. Uh, I think when I was in high school, he really kind of saw the stress that it caused me when people interpreted me as a girl, especially people who were close to me. Like at family gatherings, he would see how affected I was. Um, and there was kind of a point for him where he told me, he was like, um, I'm sorry if I've ever done anything to upset you. I really want to try, and I really want to do research, um, to understand what you're going through and what I can do to help you. And
Wow.
that was really meaningful to me. It was like
Wow.
that point where I felt like he really saw me and understood what I was going through.
Okay, let's see. We have another question. What does Vicente desire to do as a career?
Another tough question. Uh, right now, I am going to college. I'm majoring in art because that's always kind of been what I'm really good at. I was really great in school in most subjects, but nothing really called like I didn't really have a passion for anything except for art. So right now, I'm just trying to strengthen my skills and see where it takes me. I feel like with art, it has a lot to do with connections. I think some of my options could be like graphic design, being a tattoo artist, trying to
Oh,
get into
can you
kids'
draw?
murals. Yeah, I draw.
Ah, okay. All right. So, you mentioned um we're just like you mentioned non-binary. Kind of help me and my audience understand like what does that mean?
Okay, so non-binary refers to someone who isn't a man or a woman. And I know this term can seem kind of like weird and new, but it is actually something that has existed since like some of the earliest civilizations in human times. Um, so these people kind of like fill their own role. A good example could be, let me think. There's a lot of examples. Um, well, I'll say for our modern Western terms of non-binary. So non-binary is an umbrella term to refer to someone who isn't a man or a woman. Under that, there's labels like agender, which means like not having a gender at all. Um, you could have someone who's pangender who identifies as more than one gender, but not strictly a man or a woman. It's all like a very individual thing. Um, Gender really is a personal experience, even if I asked, for you, example, a cis man. So cis means that you're not trans or you're not non binary. If I asked a room of like 200 cis men, what does it mean to be a man? Everyone's going to have different answers because everyone has different lived experience of what it means to be a man. So for these people, like their lived experience puts them somewhere in between, somewhere all around. It's just a very kind of personal thing. So I can't speak on it too much because I don't identify as non-binary, but yeah, they are people. They're really wonderful people.
So, as a transgender uh, person, what do you think about some of these laws that are now coming up, specifically restricting um, or requiring like students, and you've not been out of school so long, but requiring students to only participate in sports that of their gender at birth?
I think these laws are actually really terrible. A lot of it because they aim, um, at children. I think every child, no matter their gender or their sexual orientation, should be able to engage in club activities, have things to do outside of school. I just don't think it's right that because of someone's experience, you can say, well, we don't think you should be allowed to like just go have fun with all the other kids. And I think it's also really dangerous because um, studies have shown that when trans children are not accepted by their friends and their family that can make their risk for suicide go up twice as much than the average cis person. So I think it's really putting a lot of children in danger. And not only trans children, but also cis children. Some of these proposed laws would allow teachers to actually inspect a child's genitals
Wow.
to say whether or not they can participate in something. So not only is that dangerous for trans children, that's dangerous for all children to put them in that position of vulnerability. And I don't know, it's just kind of despicable to me that people would target us for our identity, but not just us, but children who are very, very vulnerable. And a lot of them have a hard time because they don't have that support. And this would only make it harder for them.
Now I'm going to ask a hard question. It's just a question that I've had asked to me. It's not posted here, but I've had asked to me, and so I'm going to ask it. So please don't be offended by the question. Um, but is there any possibility that this is a phase? That at one point you're going to say, you know what, I changed my mind.
I don't think so. Um, for some people, a very small percentage of people realize, oh, maybe this isn't who I am, and that's okay. But I don't think that we should be using those examples to apply to all people. A majority of trans people, um, when they transition, rates of suicide go down, happiness overall, success overall goes up because you're getting to realize the person that you really are and move in the world in the way that you're comfortable with. For me personally, I've always felt this way ever since I can remember. Like my first memory as a child, I felt the same way that I do now about myself. Transitioning, I've only felt better about myself. So I really don't think that I will change my mind or feel like this is a phase. This is just who I am.
So it was interesting. You were just talking about like suicide rates and all of that kind of stuff. My wife and I were watching a show. Um, Probably this has had to been. It's been over a year ago because I think it was pre-pandemic, and
Mhm.
we were watching a show. I think on Discovery Health, and it was uh, one of the participants in the show um, says that he remembers. I'm sorry. She says she remembers as a young kid, 7, 8 years old, finding a razor blade in the bathroom and was trying to um, cut off her penis because she felt like um, it didn't belong there.
Mhm.
I'm not supposed to have this. So, and then you said, as a young child. So do you believe that kids know very, very early on? And the reason I asked the question is that example, but also because I've had somebody tell me, um, just as recently as last week, in fact, that um, parents should not be. Allowing their children to make these kinds of decisions about their lives because they're not old enough, mature enough, know enough to really know that this is that. And so, kind of with those two stories in mind, do kids really know when they're really small that there's something really different about them?
I think most kids have a better sense of themselves than their parents think they do. I mean, just in general, there's no one who's going to know yourself better than you do. And uh, when that question comes up about should we let children do these procedures, um, I think a lot of people don't actually know what the guidelines around procedures are. So, with any kind of genital surgery or secondary sex characteristic surgery, you can't have that until you're 18. Doesn't matter who you are. I mean, it's just kind of like that's just kind of how it is for most surgeries. You have to be an adult or have some kind of parental consent. So that applies. The What we see for children are things called hormone blockers. So what a hormone blocker does is it will stop, or it will basically suppress the um, hormones that will cause first puberty in a child. And these are 100% safe. They're also reversible. So if you're giving your child blockers so that they can have time to make a decision and feel comfortable in their bodies before puberty happens, if they decide, okay, maybe I am actually this, and I feel okay with that, if you take them off blockers, they will just have puberty as normal. And there will be no complications, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people are really misinformed on what kind of medical care there is for trans people, especially trans children. And now, when it comes to taking actual hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progestin, usually you have to be 16 with parental consent or a letter from a therapist. Once you turn 18, that's when you can make your own decisions. A lot of places provide what is it called? Basically, it's just like they tell you the pros and cons, and you can make the decision for yourself whether or not you want to take these hormones. I would also like to mention, just really quickly,
Sure,
that
sure.
there is another big misconception about taking hormones. People think that it's dangerous for you, but um, the people who take hormones most are not trans people. If you think about men with low testosterone, women going through menopause, birth control, these are all forms of just hormonal therapy. You take testosterone, estrogen, progestin. There's no, I mean, the side effects are pretty well known. There are some, but you take that with your own risk. So it's not so much a question of danger. It's more about a question of transness. When people hear that you're trans, they want to push on, or they assume that there is some kind of danger involved, even though these things are really, really normal, and people probably have done them.
Okay. So, um, how what is the correct way to inquire? So if you don't know what you should say, he or she, what's the correct way for a person to find out without it being offensive how you should be addressed?
So I think there's two ways that I would generally tell people. Um, if you're meeting this person for the first time or such, a really good way to go about it is introduce yourself first. So I could, if I didn't know someone's, so what we say is like pronouns, that he, she, they, and such. If I didn't know, I could be like, hey, my name is Vicente. I use he, him pronouns. What about you? And that gives a person an opportunity to tell you what they like to go by without it being confrontational without centering them, because you also share it about yourself, and it makes it a more mutual experience. Another way that you can do it is, if you ever have time alone with this person, you can just say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm making you comfortable and calling you the right thing. Like, do you have a preference of being called she, he, or like what do I identify as? But you don't ever want to make it a situation where, it's like a call out, like, what are you? You never want to ask invasive questions about people's bodies when you first meet them, just because it's a generally rude thing. Yeah, just the better way to go about it is to make it as non-confrontational as possible.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit you with a light question before I hit you with a heavy one.
All right.
So, what do you like to do for fun? We talked about kind of what you maybe would do. It's a career, but what do you do? What do you do for fun?
I really, now that the pandemic has hit, me and my friends have really been into hiking. We'll just like take like a picnic blanket, water, just go hit the trails. There's some really, really nice trails in Austin, so that's always fun. Um, I have a dog. I just really love to spend time with him. Um, let's see. Of course, I do like art and stuff in my free time. Oh, I'm really into photography. That's a really fun thing to do. So if I'm ever super bored, like I can just call a friend and be like, "Hey, do you want to model for me?" And that can be a whole day. Um, yeah. And pandemic has really just been about like creating your own fun now that we can't really go places.
Okay, so here's one of those tough questions again.
Okay.
Um, why does there seem to be more transgender people now than ever before? Like, is this the new thing? Is this a fad?
I think what is happening is that now in this day and age, people feel more comfortable coming out as trans. Back in, let's say, before the 80s, it was quite literally illegal to wear clothing that wasn't seen as for your gender. So you can only imagine how many people were transgender and they couldn't say anything. They couldn't tell anyone. They couldn't go out dressed as who they were for fear that they would be beat or put in jail or killed. So now that we have, um, a society that's being a little bit open, a little bit more open about these conversations, people feel more comfortable to really come into themselves and feel like they can have these conversations with other people. And there is this kind of idea that this is something new. As I mentioned earlier before, we've seen examples of non binary people, of transgender people globally and historically. In ancient Mesopotamia, in India, people were actually revered for transgender women were seen as spiritual beings. They were often invited to birth ceremonies to bless children. In Native American communities before colonization, um, of course, there were many variations of this identity based on what tribe you were in, but there were people, two spirits, who were seen as occupying both the space of a man and a woman and a space entirely of their own. So these identities, my kind of people, we have always really existed. It's just that now we have different language for ourselves, we have different opportunities for ourselves than we did in the past. So it really is gender is really a social thing and a cultural thing. So when you see these shifts in the culture, in the society, is when you see shifts in how people express themselves, how people are comfortable, being public about themselves.
Yeah, and Nikki says internet today versus none 20 plus years ago. So people have more space and opportunity to kind of express themselves, I imagine
Yeah.
is what, yeah.
So like even if you don't have any direct community with you, there are people that you can access on the internet who understand you, who know your experience. So even if you aren't safe in your current community, there is now with the internet, you have a space where you can be yourself, even if you can't do that in real life, which unfortunately is the reality for a lot of people. There are still many countries that have made it illegal to even be LGBT. If you come out publicly, you can be criminally punished. So unfortunately, that is the reality for a lot of people these days.
So why do you think, Vicente, why do you think that non LGBT, non trans people have such a hard time processing, digesting, accepting that people can be born one way physically, but not be that every way else?
I think a lot of it is just not understanding. You see this in basically every experience of a marginalized group. Um, People who are not in that group don't fully understand because they haven't lived through it. You see that basically all the time. And this one being a whole life experience, it being a very individual experience, I think that really comes into play. I think with a lot of people, um, they imagine, let's say, for example, you're a cis woman. A lot of people, if they're trying to imagine what it's like to be trans, they'll think to themselves, why would I want to be a man? What would make me want to be a man? When I would say a better way to think about it is, um, take for example, you're a man, right? Now say that everyone in your life saw you as a woman, even though you know right here in yourself that you're a man. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, people see you as a woman. That's closer to the experience. And I think a lot of people just, um, when trying to understand our experience, come into it from the wrong angle, which isn't necessarily their fault. They've never lived the experience. A lot of people in their real lives don't know anyone who is openly transgender, and there can be a lot of misinformation on the internet. I think that the most essential part to understanding each other is having these conversations that we are having now and being open to these ideas and being willing, you know, to educate and understand where that people have mindsets already, and those can be broken down. People can open up and change.
So, a question that I just received: how do you feel when someone constantly mispronouns you, even when they have already known? Like, how do you deal with people who refuse to identify you as male?
So we call that phenomena, we call that misgendering. Now, if it's an accidental thing, I can just correct someone, move on. If someone is intentionally doing it to me, I just choose not to engage with them. I'm lucky that I am in environments where I can choose to disengage. A lot of people, um, if it was someone in your family, sometimes you don't really have that choice. Um, but it's kind of that situation that I encountered as a child. If someone doesn't have respect for me, then I don't really feel the need to respect whatever they're saying about me. Because at the end of the day, I know who I am. You can't tell someone else who they are. You don't know someone better than they know themselves. So I try to take people's opinions with a grain of salt. If you don't know my middle name, how would you know my gender? That's really just how I think about it.
Um, let's see here. I had another question. Where did I put it? um, let's see. How many churches would marry a transgender couple? Nikki, I don't have the answer to that. I have no idea. Let's see. That's right, and family can go. Yeah. So have that's a great point. I think Nikki brings up. Have you had to distance yourself from your relatives? Any relatives that will not do right? I guess it's the best way for me to say it.
For now, I'm at a place kind of in gridlock with my family. I think my extended family doesn't really get it, and they're trying to be as respectful as I can, but they don't like really want to acknowledge it. um but like at the end of the day, I think that I'm a lot closer to my chosen family, so my friends, my close family. And I've seen a lot of trans people, that don't have these accepting families, and for them, when they choose to move away, that is really when, and like be surround themselves with people who do understand them and have that chosen family. I think that's when you really see them flourish, because that's right, family, if they're not acting as your family, if they're not supporting you or trying to understand you, then how can they consider themselves your family?
So Nikki says, so that's your answer for why people stay secret. It's shunned socially and religiously.
Yeah, in many aspects of our society, it's very shunned.
If that's how you feel, why does it matter if someone misgenders you? Just a legit question, as I'm know a vast amount of trans people that don't really care if they're misgendered. I'm curious on your thoughts. Why?
So, I mean, it is a generally very disrespectful thing. And a lot of people choose not to care because if it's something that happens a lot in your life, if you choose to fight every battle, that can really, really get to you. Trans people who face a lot of misgendering in their life, constantly engaging with people don't understand you, don't want to understand you, constantly engaging with that kind of negative activity really, really wears down on you as a person. So sometimes it gets to the point where the best thing for you is to just disengage. I don't even care. Your opinion doesn't matter. Um, what matters is that the people around you that you surround yourself do see you. And that is, it becomes a little bit more important if someone important to you, um, constantly misgenders you. That is a time where it really brings up that problem, because you can't really disengage. This is someone you want to understand you and such. So it really can be situational, um, on who it is, how long it's been happening.
I can tell you, I am a man, and I'm gonna be mad as hell if somebody keeps referring to me as a woman, because
Exactly. You
that's
feel
not
like
who
they're
I
not
am.
understanding you. Uh-huh.
And let's see, we've had some more. Uh, so I guess in response to Anthony's question, Nikki, right? So shall we call you the wrong name because it's rude? And Derek said, "Yep, it's rude. If I tell you my name is Nikki, call me Sarah and see how we rock."
Exactly.
If you misgender me, I'll have a problem with you. Hey, that's hey,
Yeah.
I'm with y'all all on that, boy. We getting it's about respect. Yes, I
Bottom
agree.
line, it's respect.
If someone keeps misgendering, I'm asking if it's some accident. Maybe some people, Anthony, I would think some people maybe because I think he even said earlier, if it was not intentional, if it was a slip up, I can deal with that.
Exactly.
But it's if it's not that, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Um, so um, I had a question. Let me see. It says, before your show is over, could you ask him, is there anything he would like to share about himself or tell the world about his transitional lifestyle that people should know or should be more sensitive about?
Hmm. This is hard. Uh, I feel like my opinions are and my experience is constantly changing as I'm growing and meeting people. It's hard to think of something I would want to say that is meaningful. That I guess I'll say that um, really, like, if you are dealing with a child who is telling you that they are transgender or telling you that they're a boy or girl, whatever, I really, really should hope that you take that opportunity to listen. What really, really damages relationships between whoever is when someone tells you something that is really, really important to them and that they have trusted you with. If you disregard that, if you shame them for it, that they're not going to want to keep you in their life. I think, a lot of people feel entitled to the relationships that they have with their children, but it's something that you have to work on. It's something that you have to cultivate. And especially if your child is in a group where in their day to day life, they are more prone to being harassed, they need someone there for them. Please be that person for them. I think that's really just the most important thing is just we need to protect trans children because they're children all the same and they matter.
I came in late. Does Vicente identify as Christian?
No, I did grow up around Christianity for a lot of my life. I have a lot of respect for Christianity. Um, I've seen the change that it can make in people's life, and of course, I would never like tell anyone to stop practicing. I think everyone's entitled to their own practice. For me personally, I think I'm just kind of um, I don't really have a word for what I am. I would just say that I'm kind of spiritual. I believe that we as people, we are all connected. We're connected to the earth. We're connected to living things. Um, we have an underlying sense and compassion of what it means to be alive. Um, there's just some kind of underlying magic here that just makes everything that we experience possible and makes it actually very special.
So we're getting close to the end. So if you guys have more questions, you better get them in
Quick
because
speed round.
we, we have about 10 minutes left before it's over. Um, so my question is, I know outside of the obvious, I asked you to come on and you agreed to come on, but why else would you agree to have this conversation with me?
Um, I was there's a lot of reasons. So if there's anyone who is viewing this who is trans themselves or knows someone who's trans, I think having these conversations with someone who's lived the experience instead of having to do research online and just kind of going off whatever. I think this can really open you up to what it actually means to be trans, because there's a lot of ideas about it, and the reality is that everyone's experience is different. So even just knowing one experience, I think, can be really important. And if you are trans yourself, seeing someone who is trans and knowing that it's okay, you can be this way and you can still live a happy life, I think that's really reassuring. And I know that there's a lot of trans people who don't have that. They don't have anyone to look up to, um, at all. What else? I was gonna say something else, but my mind just totally blanked.
Oh, well, if you think about it, then let me know. Nina says, "Thank you for sharing your life with us today." Um, did you have trouble going through the process, as in seeing doctors and such? Do you have suggestions on making it easier? I ask because I'm trans as well and having a hard time.
So I'm really, really lucky to live in Austin. We have a lot of resources. So the place where I get my medical care is a gender clinic. If you live in an urban area, looking specifically for a gender clinic um, is going to be the most understanding place to go for, to get treatment as a trans person, because they already know coming in what your situation is. If that is not available to you in terms of getting hormones, you know, you want to look for someone who is like a trans friendly endocrinologist, such and such. If people say explicitly that they are LGBT friendly, that's a really good bet. Um, I think it's always a good idea to be open with your doctor about your transness. It can be hard because some doctors don't know how to treat you, they don't know how to talk to you. Sometimes you will have to teach them, but disclosing that and seeing how it goes forward from that point lets you know if you're going to keep that doctor, if you're going to change. It can be a really hard process to find a doctor who has your needs. So if you are in the Austin area, the place that I would recommend is the Kind Clinic. They have 3 locations. They have um, they have resources for hormones. They have resources for STD testing for anyone. You can walk in, HIV medicine. So Kind Clinic, if you're in Austin, they're really great.
Oh, so you read that he said so he's in Austin and
Yes,
he's been denied. Well,
it
um,
is hard because there's waiting lines in very many places. There's limited resources for us as trans people, which sucks. But
Nikki says, I love this. And here it is, the Kind Clinic. That's
yes.
Michelle says, Vicente, I commend you for sharing. My cousin was born a male with both private parts, and my onset, the doctor said it was best to go with the more tendencies. He is a male with female privates. Do you think now? Do you think nowadays this is still happening?
So that is actually a separate thing entirely. So when we talk about gender, that's these are more of roles in society, such as man, woman. When we talk about sex, that is what applies to your body. So that's going to refer to your genitals, your hormones, your secondary sex characteristic, your chromosomes. So people who have, um, so your standard two are going to be male and female. So when you have people who have, let's say, for example, both genitals, or they have different chromosomes such as XXY or XYY, that kind of thing. What we call that is intersex. Now, intersex people, they can have any variety of like bodies, but again, their gender experience is really up to their lived experience. Some intersex people are women, some intersex people are men, some intersex people are non-binary. So it just matters on your relatives' like lived experience. Whatever they say that they are, you should respect that. Um, and yeah, intersex people have been around forever. Unfortunately, um, intersex people, a lot of them when they're born, uh, doctors will perform surgery on their genitals to make them look one way or another, oftentimes without asking the consent of the parents. This can cause a lot of distress for that person growing up because they can feel that something is off. So I think the most important thing, if you know someone who is intersex, is to, ask them about how they feel and such. Because really, at the end of the day, it's what their experience is the most important.
Derek says these definitions are so important. Most people ignorantly conflate sex, sexuality, and gender. Thank you for
Mhm.
providing a safe environment where Vicente can share his life with us and we can ask questions to better understand. Awesome show. Nikki says, I love this. Okay. Well, Vicente, thank you so much. I really appreciate. I think this has been an incredible conversation, and many times, as I told you before we got on air, is um, I don't know stuff, and so part of what I like to do on my show is to bring people on to help me understand because I'm still trying to learn because I want to be respectful towards people um, and and you know, I'm not even saying that I'm definitely not anti-trans gender or any. I respect people as people, you know, and so I just always want to do the right thing, be the right person, and so I thank you for giving me and my audience the opportunity to learn and to know and to grow, and. I told you before, you know, there may be an occasion where I ask you to come back and be part of a
I would
panel
love that.
where we kind of take this conversation even further, even deeper. And so, everybody, thank you so much for joining in tonight. Thank you guys for being really participant. What word am I saying? Uh,
For
thank you for
participating.
for participating. I guess that was the easiest way. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Vicente. Thank you, everybody. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.